Hey, KC, did you copy that last transmission about HT will not be able to make it this morning because of internet connection over?
Somebody got a lot of names up around here, right? Keith, if you're talking, nobody can hear you.
How about now?
Yep, now we can hear you.
Good night. All right. So,
I wish I had that every time I did the recording and forgot to push the talk button. Way too many times.
Yeah, so I'll start over again. We're down to 12 sergeants in the sergeant seminar. We had one drop for an unknown reason at this time, but so we had 3 observers. One was a former Kirk Horse staff sergeant that attended one of my cycles. He came in, he's a communicator, and I'm waiting on his written observations of what he thought of the seminar and the lesson itself. And then we also had Sergeant Major Maddox, the University Sergeant Major, come, and Sergeant Major LaHue, the TCOM Sergeant Major, also were present. They were present for about an hour and a half. I started the seminar with a current event, Marines United, asking them some open-ended questions. I played dumb, tried to figure out what they knew about it and what they could teach each other about Marines United perspectives from their units, from their sections, etc., and then how it impacted them individually. Ultimately, we came back around to the Commandant's video and what the Commandant had directed sergeants to do, and so we went through all of that, and then we tried to find touch points into this lesson throughout the evening. But before I moved on to the first activity, I gave the room over to Sergeant Major Maddox for a minute or two, and he added some stuff about the Marines United. They were very receptive, of course, and then we broke into the first activity. The first activity, what I did was I'm fortunate I have 4 whiteboards in the classroom that I teach. So I gave each of them a whiteboard and a marker, and then said, based on your personalities, if you're type 1, you go to this whiteboard, etc. And then once they were there, I said, we're going to do a brainstorming activity, linked it back to a couple lessons ago where we covered brainstorming in one of the required reads. And so what I want you to do is brainstorm things that motivate you as an individual, activities that you do in your profession, back at your unit, former units, wherever, things that maybe would motivate you that aren't in your wheelhouse right now at your unit, but you want to or anticipate having in the future. So we did that, and gave them 5 minutes. They came down with about 15, 20 things, and then I said, okay, let's neck this down and let's find 5 that are really essential of these to you as individual groups. The groups were broken down into 2, 4, 3, and 3 of the 12 sergeants that we had. And then from there, I went around the room and had each of them brief to their peer groups what's important to them. But when they briefed it, they opened up with, we are this type of personality. We're introverted. We're whatever their type was. So they self-described themselves. And then they went into what motivates them. We went around the room, and then the next assignment based on that same activity was for them, now that they have a better understanding of approaches to motivating individuals in other sections, wanted them to reflect upon their own unit and then figure out one for each of the other types that they have not that they're not part of, and even though a lot of them have some bleed over, they had to come up with something that would motivate them or build somebody's morale, and then why was the important factor there. So, for instance, one of the groups said, hey, for this type of person, we would want them to evaluate and assess our standard operating procedures because they're the analytical types that feel important when they do that because of their impact to the larger unit, etc. So we went around the room, we did each of those. That whole scenario probably took about 40 minutes. And then we gave some validation with each of those. So when somebody was given from type 1 to type 2 an assignment back at their unit, we made sure that we clarified and confirmed with the type 2s, hey, would this actually build morale? Would you feel more cohesive part of the unit, etc.? Why or why not? So we had a couple that were refuted and then gave their reasonings why, and then they offered with what would be a good substitution for that. And that went fairly well. That whole scenario took about an hour and a half total from the time that we started with our Marines United. And then after that activity was done, we took a break, and because of the personalities that were described, I picked a Marine from the self-proclaimed introvert group, and I moved into the next IFC, which was how do introverts lead extroverts. And I said, hey, after the break, Danny is going to describe to us his opinion and or thoughts on how introverts lead extroverts. So then they all broke and came back, and we went through each of the remaining IFCs up to the last IFC. We did not have time for that because during the during IFC Delta, how do Marine Corps leadership principles play into your daily routine? Because I was compressed for time, I went around the room, assigned each of the Marines a principle, and a couple of them had to double down on. And then they had to describe back to their peers how they were going to apply that principle, and then give a self-reflection of personal assessments on how they've been applying that or not. And then they had to share how to increase or start doing it if they hadn't been doing it back at their units, and then offered the room for at each of the leadership principles to their peers to acknowledge and or give other ideas that they may have had. And literally, that was right around the 2-hour and 45-minute mark, and I had to transition into the required reads for prosciutto and or Gate Supplier, how they were to select one or the other as their required read and associated quiz for next week's lesson. So we did a little preview wrap up, and that was good. The majority of the time on IFC C was revolved primarily around the required read B. Chapter 5 on cohesion, on sustaining the transformation. So they had a lot of good discussions that they were able to tie into vertical cohesion, horizontal cohesion, etc., and then individual morale building. So it was a pretty lively seminar. I thought it went off with a hitch. Had asked them for a summary of what they felt was the importance there, and they were pretty spot on with that they have people at their units that they're not reaching, and this lesson helps them see that and helps them figure out that they need to do a better job at understanding how to reach those individuals within their small sections, groups, etc. So that was kind of it, fellas. I know that was down and dirty, but I'm looking for your questions now.
Hey Keith, did you switch the IFCs around from the lesson card? Because I was trying to follow you there, and it seemed like they were different.
Yeah, so on the activity itself, when I opened up with the activity, the IFC 1, I incorporated throughout the activity. So when we did brainstorming, we would make sure that we talked about reflection on the students' current working conditions, and then examples, etc. So at each of the breaks within the activity, I covered IFC 1 fairly well, and that took up to about an hour and a half, and then I moved into IFC 2 or B, how introverted after the break, and then the cohesion, IFC C, was covered next, and then the leadership principles themselves. I never got into IFC E. I ran out of time, and I'm not sold that I probably would have covered it either. I think I would have spent more time on A through D. I'm still struggling with the connections there on how does that build the profession of the Marine Sergeant, but that's something that I'll talk with the developer on separately. But in this case, I had planned on it, but ran out of time, which was, I felt fortunate.
Curious to know how many, did you have more introverts than extroverts?
I had, 3.
Only 3 introverts?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, when Pat says this group is a lively group, these guys and one gal, they are talkers. They are out there. They are movers and shakers that are changing the world. Got a great group of sergeants.
Did you ever get to the point where it was criticizing extroverts for not being critical thinkers and reacting and responding too quickly to decisions?
That's a good question. Not necessarily the exact way that you phrased it, but there was the personalities that were, they had to be in charge. They were extroverted, and what can you charge them with? And they kind of self-proclaim that they're not necessarily the deepest thinkers. So, and that was good for them to describe themselves and kind of do a true reflection and be humble enough to admit some of those things. So there wasn't really any verbal scuffs or anything like that with one another throughout the night. I mean, they stayed in the profession scholarly realm, and I thought that they were all learning from one another, and they were telling, hey, I'm the guy that you want to motivate me, put me in charge of PT. I love that. I want to create haters. This is the sergeant's ears. The guy that lives in the gym. So there was a lot of exchanges of ideas that happened throughout the activity.
Hey, Chief Dwayne. Hey, I'm just curious. Did anything come up? Did you try to tie in what's going on in the Marine Corps today? On the internet with the photos. Did any of that come up during the conversations?
Yeah. So right up front, we did that for about 15 minutes. Marines United, and we did tie it in specifically to IFC Charlie, the one that covered cohesion. We brought it back up, pure cohesion, and then through vertical cohesion primarily. And when we talk about the vertical cohesion, we talk about what the Commandant had charged the NCOs with. And I use the term clear the path, okay? The Commandant wants a clear path for those that are, feel like they've been violated or whatever, that they have a clear path between him and the Marine that was, unfortunately put on that site or something like that. So when we tied it in that regard, if that's what you were wondering.
Roger.
Hey Keith, you don't have to record this part, but I am curious to know what our visitors had to say. Were they scheduled to come, or would they come down because of all this recent current events?
I found out about 2 hours before seminar that the University Sergeant Major was coming. I wasn't told about TCOM, so I don't know if it was scheduled in their heads and the word never got to me or Pat, but it didn't matter. I mean, there was no change in the way that anything happened. I'll tell you that LeHue was late coming in, so Maddox had been there about 15 minutes, and I had already given him the floor. He took about a minute or two, and then took a seat, and then we moved into the activity. As soon as I described to the sergeants, hey, this is your activity, this is what I want you to do, I want you to do brainstorming. When I got clarification, everybody understood. I said, ready, break. I went over to introduce myself to LeHue, and at that time, LeHue was asking Maddox, and they were exchanging like, hey, what did I miss? Maddox had comments that were very positive, optimistic, and LeHue had a lot of questions for me when I did meet him, but Maddox was describing basically the Socratic environment, but he used the term guided discussion and what he had just observed about Marines United. And then he went further on to talk about, because during that 15 minutes I was pulling the thread on each of them on what was going on back at their units, what were the actions that that the leadership of their unit had taken as direction from the Commandant. And he was retelling some of what had been happening that he had heard from the Marines conversations that we were having before LeHue got there. And then Sergeant Major LeHue had a lot of questions about the differentiation between the resident and the sergeant seminar. Specifically, what are the differences? You know, what do you get here that you're not going to get over there? What do you get over there that you're not going to get here? Because those are the questions that apparently are being asked and answered on the roadshow. So I went through the front-end analysis, how we took the resident POI, how we stripped away drill PT and mentoring time off of the POI, and kind of boiled it down to, okay, this is what we got, and then within the 83-hour construct of academic hours, what transfers over pretty easily, and then what do we need to reconfigure. And then I explained how we then went into a further assessment of, we've already built the DEPs, and we want to leverage the ABCs and then create the DEFs in our seminar. And I said, so then there was a further refinement of how we came about getting the same learning outcomes achieved, whether they're at resident and/or seminar. So he was intuitive. He was taking it all in. He had some really good questions, and he stayed about an hour and a half, both of them. And they shook my hand, said thanks. I couldn't thank them enough. I said, really applaud you guys coming out and sticking your nose in here and observing what's going on with your sergeant. So that was the short conversation that I had, which was maybe 4 or 5 minutes with him.
Seemed like he was on board.
I got to tell you, Sergeant Major Maddox seemed very on board. Sergeant Major LeHue seemed very, in receive mode. There was no indicators whatsoever. My spidey senses weren't tingling that he was against this at all. I think he was looking for ammunition on how to make sure he was fighting a good fight on our behalf out there when he went on this roadshow. So I tried to make sure that he was well armed on his way out the door. Primarily it was the drill. He grabbed Maddox's rank, said everybody wearing these things is very, drill is very important to them, and the perception for all of them is that you're only going to send the sick, lame, and lazy and the fat bodies to seminar instead of regular sergeants. So I broke down, I said, for 43 of those hours, these sergeants are self-directed learners. They're given assignments that they have to read at a minimum of, 20 pages an hour average. And I said, but it's reflective reading, So we went down like, what is reflective reading? How do we derive our IFCs? How do we derive our educational objectives? So there was a lot of not necessarily transfer of learning conversation about that seminar that night, but it was more of an overview of the Socratic seminar construct. And then I, went further on and said, the 40 touch hours that, your sergeants have with any of the adjunct faculty, you see that. I said, those touch hours are, they're living in the cognitive domain. They're making decisions. They're being asked open-ended questions. They have to assess their thinking and then convey to their peers and the adjunct faculty who are going to redirect and we're going to ask them to rephrase, who are constantly working on their ability to communicate and make decisions across the plethora of subjects that we have. And so he had never opened up Blackboard, hadn't seen Blackboard. It was very descriptive, but Sergeant Major Maddox was definitely a right chair on that one. He kind of chimed in numerous times throughout the 4 or 5 minutes that I had his attention. But unfortunately, the brainstorming kind of coming to an end at the 5 minutes, and I had to remove myself from there, and I didn't have anybody else from seated to kind of assist in further answering any questions. So I can't say for sure that it was totally positive because I didn't get any direct feedback from them, but hell, it's almost 1100 here, and I'm not fired yet, so something must have went right.
Yeah, and I haven't seen the 4-week curriculum at the academies, but I know we took drill out like 6 frickin' years ago, and if these guys ever visited an academy, they'd see what drill we're teaching. How many hours of drill actual practical application is being taught in the 4-week course now?
Yeah, I don't have that number off the top of my head, Tim. I'll tell you what we did was we immediately looked and stripped all of that out just to kind of figure out what is essential that we can either transfer as is, or how can we modify to make sure that we're still achieving all the educational objectives that are being taught at the resident course. What I did offer LaHue was, I said, I'm sure that this concept has already been, driven up to you, but if those on a roadshow are that concerned, maybe there's a way that if they increased their corporal's courses at their units by a day or two, then they can absorb some of those hours of drill that a sergeant's going to get, 2 years down the road, and if it means that much to them. So I did throw that out at him as a possible solution, and I got the north and south on that one, so he was thinking about it, and we'll see what happens.
Okay, I know the corporal's course teaches guidon and sword. That's all they teach. And they've got that 2-week period, 14 training days. So.
Yeah, so anybody else got any inquiries out there? Chris, Marvin, Calvin?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right, so the homework, I see that they don't have to turn that in. So they came to class with that homework already done up. Did you have a feeling like anybody didn't do it or were BSing their way, or you're pretty confident you put them in the right personality groups and all that?
Yeah, way to mitigate that, of course, Chris, is, hey, everybody bring in your homework. I want to see it when you get here. And I did not do that because Pat did the wrap-up before. But as soon as they got there, I wanted to see it. And I don't know if I didn't get the feeling that I was being BS'd, because I went to them and said, those that did not physically have it, there was only a couple of them. Of those, I said, so what was your second, or closest? And then I made them describe to me, which kind of gave me a good feel that they actually did do it. But, just like you, Trust but Verify is not only important at Afghanistan, it's definitely important here too. So that's the way that I approach the question.
Sounds good.
Hey Keith, this is Calvin. At the whiteboard activity, at any point did it get a little too busy or feel like it was getting away from it at any point? Because sometimes those activities, especially with a real talkative group, was it hard to really just kind of keep those guys in the box or no?
Yeah, good question, Kelvin. No, they are a very talkative group, and there was a lot of conversations that were happening. But I think they was teed up, made sure that they understood, clarified, and confirmed what the end result we were looking for here. And then they did a lot of extra talking, I'm sure, as I was engaged with the Sergeant Major, or Sergeant Majors, but I would have definitely been more engaged as a facilitator if I didn't have somebody busy. I would have been going from group to group. So I can't give you an answer that's associated with me having observed them for the full 5 minutes because my attention was diverted in a couple different locations. But I did see near the end, them kind of staring at me, at least one of the groups, like, hey, we're done, and it was right around the 5-minute mark, so that's when I broke away from the sergeants majors. Yeah.
Good to go. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, fellas, well, Dwayne, any further questions? Tim?
I'm good.
Okay. So the good, bad, and the ugly that Pat sent out, I'm going to try and get one of those typed up, if not today or over the weekend at least, and get that out to you. I did not see a whole lot of ugly with this one, like I said. The good was that, through just open-ended questioning at the end, they kind of realized, stepping through the IFCs in the order that they had in the spool, kind of led them down the path of, to build a more cohesive unit. I do need to understand the personalities of those that are within there, and which has a direct correlation with the readiness of that unit. So, and that was basically rephrased from one of the sergeants' mouths last night, as I asked one of them to give me a wrap up. So, with that, I'll get this thing posted on YouTube, and if you got any other inquiries, you can hit me up anytime.
All right, brother. Appreciate it.
Okay. Take care, Dwayne.
Yes, sir.
Thanks a lot, Keith. Appreciate it, man.
All right. Thanks.